Welcome to the My Cow podcast, and my name's Sean Bellamy, and I've enjoyed over 20 years working with New Zealand farmers with dairy nutrition and cow health. Now, a special thank you goes out to Advanced Nutrition as our primary supporter. The focus of this podcast is to be a vehicle for delivering relevant insights to dairy farmers and ag professionals, all to help drive cow efficiency and farm business profitability, because stronger businesses are more sustainable and help to build stronger communities. Welcome everyone to the My Cow podcast. Really exciting interview today. Been really looking forward to coming down to Southland and sitting down with Chris. I've been working with Chris and Tanya for how long? 10 years?
Because I was in Hawke's Bay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which was with Dad actually.
Yeah.
So second generation. You know, we'll sit down and we tend to talk about all sorts, farming and family and everything else in between. But yeah, I really love the way these guys farm, and I like the way they mix family and farming, and the way they manage their staff, and just the way they've gone after excellence, but they've done it in a way that really works for everybody involved in the business. I think that's created a really strong business, and they've been really successful at what they do. So really keen to dig deeper, ask some questions. I know you're a little bit not super keen on doing this, but that's all good. It'll be good fun. So I'll run through some questions and we'll dig into the gold. So thanks again for jumping on. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself and the family?
Yeah. Well, my name's Chris Deroles. We run a farming business called Aurum Farming.
So how many farms are you overseeing?
4.
Yeah, and 3,000 cows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also entails being involved in a few syndicates, and we do have some just straight share milking entities. In fact, we run a share milking business. I do that in conjunction with my wife. She actually runs a farm herself, and my daughter's involved in the administration and some of the health and safety, and as well as running a family cherry orchard, which we started 3.5 years ago. We have our first full season of picking this Christmas, so that's
exciting.
Scary reality.
And what's the average per cow milk production that you do?
This year will be back about, I'd say it'll be maybe 530 or 540. So we have some land that the company owns itself, and it has shares in, at the moment, two other syndicates. And we run the business as 50-50 share milkers for the syndicates. So basically day-to-day control, looking after everything and providing the staff for that as well, of which they are all contract milkers. And that way that we're just trying to help guys come through the system and be a little bit more involved and take a bit of accountability as well as pride in what they're able to achieve.
So there's quite a few levels. Firstly, why did you decide to do the syndicate ownership share milking sort of thing rather than just go and buy a farm, work it, and then buy another farm and go on from there?
I guess we came from a share milking background. That's the rate of return as a share milker is better than as a farm owner. So you're kind of using it like a contracting business to increase the amount of money you can reinvest back into land. The syndicates that we work for, we've been involved with, they do not want to run the farms themselves. They want to employ a 50-50 share milker. So it's quite a good fit. And I mean, one of them we've been involved with for, I think, about 14 years. So there's a great deal of trust there. And,
so they basically are happy just to leave you to it?
Yep.
Cool. And just almost like land banking, the money is, the land's earning money.
Yep.
Yeah. Clever.
Make sure the farm's tidy, make sure they get paid the shareholder payment every month. Generally, people will be pretty happy.
Yeah, and the irrigator's not left in the bottom corner, and
100%.
The council's not taking photos.
100%. So, if you take pride in what you do, and I mean, it doesn't really matter whether it's a farm that we share milk or we wholly owned. I mean, they're basically all the same. On the idea is that farms are not something that you use up. They should be as good or better this year than what they were last year.
Yep. So they're an improving asset.
Yep.
Like not just appreciating in value, but you're actually improving the soil, you're improving the infrastructure.
Yep.
Yeah. Which makes sense from a sustainability point of view.
Yep. That way everybody takes pride in what they're doing, and that goes a long way to making sure you're trying to get the right culture in the business, is that everybody cares.
Mm-hmm. And I guess better infrastructure, you get better staff, cows are better fed, happier, business just runs better.
Well, and like from whether it's something that we wholly own or partially owned, I mean, you can go and say, well, we just need to fix this bit of the race, or we need to build another calf shed or whatever. And I mean, people are on board with doing that because they can see the benefit going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Interesting. Well, the way you've got like different levels of ownership, eh? So you've got your syndicates, you've got your shoe milking setups, and then you've got contract milkers. So you employ the contract milkers, but you don't employ any staff outside of the contract milkers. Then they employ their own staff. Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all our guys are Filipino guys, so they like employing their family, and that's,
cool.
When they probably first come out, the new people, I mean, it takes a bit of getting on board. Well, if they're prepared to do that, I mean, that's all good. It's all good for the industry. It's all good for their families. And I guess like we're talking to one person on that farm, and we're not dealing with the day-to-day issues around, staffing on that farm, although any staffing issues become our issues indirectly anyway.
Yeah, sure. But if someone doesn't show up to milk, well, they're not going to call you.
No.
Which is handy. Like, have you had the contract milker set up for a while? Yeah. What have you learned through that process?
Life's a bit easier. HR takes a lot. And the other thing is that, when you have a farm with 3 or 4 people on it, they've all got to be able to get on together. If we are influencing the staff that they get, that might make it harder for people on farm to work, to work together. And then,
we've had choosing the people they want to work with, basically. Makes sense.
Yeah, we have a good bunch of guys now, and most of them have been with us for quite a while, which makes what we're doing easy, makes any addition to or any changes we make easy, because they're not coming wholesale from something completely different, where people have different standards and different ways of doing stuff to us. And I think it takes a wee bit of time to realise that we might be doing things just slightly different, but you'll see the benefit, whether it makes life easier down the track or the cows milk better or whatever, going forward. And you have to have people that want to succeed in the industry.
Yeah.
They want to do a good job. Yep.
And would you say you organise the farm businesses a little bit around the staff that you've got? If you've got a really key person, and their strengths and weaknesses?
We do a lot of organisation in the background. So everything is as simple as it can be for them. So they are looking after the cows. They're not having to worry about other issues.
Okay. So fertilizer, feed, all that sort of stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
So, well, hopefully in conjunction with your new app, we'll be providing them with the feed mixes that they need. And I mean, that's sort of not really their decision. I mean, we're interested in how they think the results are, but from nutritional level, I mean, that's for you clever guys. We just use that information. So, like, for instance, I mean, they've got radar detectors on their silo, so they know how much is in the silo. They text to get it refilled. The fills that they get in the silo are already set in the system about what the mixes are.
Right, so they just message someone. They don't have to know what the mix is, how much to order. They just say go.
They get that information. They know what the mix is, but they're not the ones having to decide the mix or whether to change it or all that sort of stuff. And I mean, all that work of contracting feed or whatever you're doing is all done in the background for them. And I think that's and the fact that they know that we're always going to feed the cows gives people a lot more confidence in doing what they're doing, because Chris will fix it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, within reason. But
it probably gives them the opportunity to grow, because they can make a mistake, and you've got a simple enough, tight enough system that you can fix it pretty quick and get things back on track. Yeah, because we have talked a little bit about setting round lengths, pasture management, being able to even take a paddock out for silage if you have to, all that sort of stuff. That all sort of works together, doesn't it, to create a system where the guys can grow. Because I could imagine when you first got your contract milkers, some of them were probably a little bit more green, and they had to learn and develop into the role.
Yeah, because they really got to get used to what we want.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just like, if you want to make a change, the first question I ask you is what your pasture cover is. So, like they know that if they want to do something, they're going to say, I've just done a farm walk and I want to do this. And that way, it's the same if I've got a sick cow. The first thing I ask them is, what's the cow's temperature? So if they need help with something along those lines, they know what questions are going to be asked. So they soon realise that we better do that first.
Yep. Which is a good thing, because sometimes they'll do that and be like,
I've solved the problem.
yeah, now that I have more information, I can actually sort this myself.
Yep.
So talk me through how you do work with the guys and you manage feed. Like, because, I think a lot of people listening will be like an open checkbook in terms of just feed the cows or fully feed the cows or feed them as much as you can. Even I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, man, your pasture could get out of control pretty darn quick and things could get pretty out of kilter. How do you work with the guys to make sure that everything stays super tight on farm feed wise?
So we start off with the statement is that the cows can have as much as they want to eat, as long as we don't waste grass. So that's where we start
Foundation.
From. Yep. So they know that we can feed the cows, but we have to manage the pasture. And so they do their farm walks. We try and keep, the round lengths, whatever we're doing, at the right round length. Like how many hectares are we using a day? And then what are we going into? What are we coming out of? And then I try and go to the farms like once a week, and we'll drive around and we'll just be looking at those things. And then we're thinking about what the weather's going to do, whether it's going to be better or worse growth, and going forward from there. And they get used to that kind of system, and then it doesn't seem that hard to keep achieving it.
Sure.
And they know, if they get into a surplus, we'll send the contractor in. They can bale a paddock of baleage if that's what it takes, but it's usually more, and back in the round. So we're not shutting up huge amounts of silage. We're just doing everything a little bit of the time as the surplus arrives. And one of the hardest things to do is get them to take the grass out early. We can always go back, but once we start pushing that wedge up too far in front of us, we're going to go downhill. And we end up with too much area out and all those sort of things. So it's just making them confident that, they can do that early, and they know 2 weeks later, if we get a drop in growth rate and we had to feed that back out again, well, that's not a sin. That's just life.
But a lot of people watching this would say, what would you make a paddock of baleage and then have to 2 weeks later feed it out again? Wouldn't it be smarter just to go into slightly higher residuals and just make the cows come back and clean up?
To be fair, we probably haven't fed it out 2 weeks later. That's never happened. But it's kind of that thought that at the time it's not a mistake. At the time it's the best thing to do. I mean, we're thinking that the grass is either going to continue to grow, to enough for the cows or more than what the cows need. And so that's what it's based on. Otherwise, you'd just simply slow the round down for a wee bit and let it take up.
Because it's easy to say, the cows are going to eat, let's say for argument's sake, 19 kilos of dry matter. But by managing your pre-grazing residual, so if you're getting, if you're going into 2,900, then all of a sudden you're creeping into 3,100 and you're like, let's take your paddock out. The guys are like, no, we'll just keep eating through it. But what you're doing by taking that paddock out and keeping them at 2,900, you're making sure that the rumen microbes can still get access to the same amount of nutrient as what they have been getting each day before it got to 3,100, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is about keeping quality, and that's driving totally me. And that's all we want to do. And also, if we keep it within parameters, if we do have a burst of growth, there's not a massive amount of pasture that's going to get out of control, which generally leads to taking more out of the round than is sustainable.
And then you get these peaks and troughs, which are actually really hard to manage. So what you're doing is whipping the top off the graph if it starts going up a little bit too steep, so that you just keep a nice straight line. So you're not having this.
And because they go back in, the round straight afterwards, I mean, you've still got all the available area there if there is a decrease in growth rate.
All you've done by bringing the mower in is like just adding 10 cows for a couple of weeks. Yeah, and then ship them away again. They're just wrapped in plastic, ready for another day.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like it's wasted.
And it's good quality, right?
Yep.
Even if it's hard to make good silage down here, which is often the conversation we have.
Very hard.
Yeah, we are in Southland, if we didn't mention that. So yeah, definitely one of life's challenges. Oh, that's really interesting. I think one of the big things that I've learned working with you is how important it is to create a system that works for each of the team. And I was quite inspired actually just hearing you talk about, because you got some wearables on the farms, and how some of the guys interact with the wearables a little bit differently based on what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy, and where their gifts are and things, and how that's actually been it's really driven some of the guys to really get into that data and use it. Did you want to talk a little bit about the wearable side of things and reproduction and what you've been what you've been seeing in the team.
I think they've taken more notice of the information that's come out because they've taken a bit of ownership of that. I mean, we've just finished our second year with half our cows with collars on. The first year, everybody was really nervous, me included, about, whether it was going to work or whether it wasn't going to work. And to be honest, we put some bulbs out, even with the collars, on the first year.
Yep.
And then what we found out is that all, we were using short gestation semen, but they all calved to the bull 10 days later. So obviously the bulls got them. Second year, no bulls. And that was just like probably me being more nervous than them. But I know
the insurance policy.
Yeah. The first year, one of our guys, he stood up there every milking and watched all the cows get drafted out because he was real skeptical that it was going to work. So it's quite a hard case. And then, then they're looking at the data and going, oh, my cows aren't ruminating enough.
Yep.
It says we've got 20 possible, aborted cows and stuff like that, and getting quite worried. It's just like, we can't change what's happened. Let's just see, what reality is when we pregnancy test them again in May. And the reality was it was just normal. About 1% of the cows turned up, not to be in calf.
Sure.
So,
which is normal, but they just haven't seen it before. So now they can see it. They're like, this is really bad.
They've got this data which says it's super bad. And I think it's, the data is really good, but you've just got to be careful how you read it. So this year, all the rest of the cows have got collars. So we've now got 3,000 cows with collars. And I think what we've seen in conjunction with using short gestation semen is that we can manipulate the calving quite a bit. And hopefully, over a couple of years, we'll be able to pull everything in a bit tighter. Because we don't do any intervention. There's no CEDAs, PGs or anything like that. It's just all.
And what was your empty rate average over the season?
Over the whole lot would have been, I think, about 12.
Okay. Yep.
But it did range from 9 to 14 or 15.
Which is probably not too bad for down here.
No, but I do know that, the spring had quite a big impact, and the one that had the highest empty rate probably had, the hardest time. Well, the two farms that actually had the highest empty rates.
Right. No, the wettest farms, obviously.
Yeah.
Just got hit with it because the spring was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it?
Really? It was. But like the one that was about 9% was just slightly under 9. I mean, if we could achieve that on all the farms with no intervention, I mean, that's a massive step forward.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was the 6-week in calf rate average?
It would have been about 70, but that ranged from like very high 70s to just under 70.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So the one that was lower is a carryover because it's always been a little bit behind.
Yeah, it's catching up.
And it was kind of one of the reasons for the collars. Can we be more consistent if we use technology, rather than people? And I know that the best performing farm was still the best performing farm with collars on. In fact, it lifted a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah, in terms of mating performance, and they were also the highest producing cow.
Yeah, which is also quite interesting.
It is, and so you're thinking like, well, if we can take a little bit of the differential out of everything and get us more consistent.
It's amazing. Like I deal with a lot of farmers with tech, and you often see the really good farmers, they'll put tech on and they go to a whole nother level again. Like a lot of people would say, oh, well, you're already a good farmer, you're not going to get a lot out of tech, but it's almost like it just removes another whole set of variables that you didn't have as much control over. And then all of a sudden you can take the excellence in what you do and you can almost like stretch it over more things because you got rid of some of those non-controllables.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the short gestation semen, that's a big thing. And I mean, like asking people to draft cows for 10 or 11 weeks is just hard work.
Yeah. So it's opened up more options as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. So how many farms are you overseeing?
4.
Yeah. And 3,000 cows.
Yeah.
And what's the average per cow milk production that you're doing?
This year will be back about, I'll tell you, it'll be maybe 530 or 540.
But this last season was a poorer season for down here, and the season before was a bit of a record. What was the
we did average 550 though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so pretty good.
But still with a stretch between the the top and the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think I worked out your live weight probably ranges somewhere around that 500 to 550.
Yeah.
So your heavier cows will be 550 just before calving, and then we're back to 500. So you're up at or slightly over live weight, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And feed wise, you're feeding in the shed. How much per cow roughly you're feeding, and what do you feed?
I think this year was about a ton. Well, we're just over a ton and a half. I think it was a
Total supplement.
There was a reasonable amount of silage went in this year on 2 farms. Fed silage was the first time in 2 years.
Wow.
So, and then the one of the highest stocking rate farm, it did feed a lot of silage, but we are actually reducing the stocking rate. So the stocking rate will be more like 3.2 on each farm, because we've decided that don't need a lot of silage, if it's a reasonable season and we can live on mainly concentrate.
Okay, so you've figured out that about 3.2 is where the farms work quite well with your system, and you try and minimize feeding silage?
Yep.
Okay. That's a little bit different. But you're feeding in shed to offset that, and
in trailers and that,
right.
either on the feed pad or on the exit race.
Why would you minimize silage?
It's
dig a bit deeper. Okay. Yeah.
And down here, it just seems really hard to make really good silage. The weather plays such a big part in it. And I mean, like we were talking before about the baleage, I mean, you can grow really, really good baleage if you go and cut it early. It's just not practical to do silage like that.
Yep.
I mean, not last season, the season before, I mean, we made a lot of baleage on farm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was all kind of fed out, and that was all just premium quality stuff.
And that was probably pretty useful for the wet spring we had.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there was one farm that hadn't fed silage for 2 years.
2 of them.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So that very much changed. I think the 700 cow farm, I think they used 240 tonnes of dry matter as well as more concentrate. So it just shows you how much grass we didn't grow.
Yeah. But then they did pretty much declare a state of emergency down here for a period of time, didn't they? That was pretty bad. When Southland gets wet, she's pretty...
Yeah. We don't get paid extra for that, though.
No, that's right. It's another discussion for another day, but I can imagine the wastage down here varies a lot.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons we're not super keen on really long grass.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if it gets wet, they just push more in, takes longer to recover. And, as well as probably not being as good a quality. The grazing pressure of the paddock makes a huge difference, when it's a little bit wet. So you try and get, slow rounds down too much, and you actually just push more in. And so that's why kind of like the being able to feed the cows. So, we don't have to have long grass and tighten them up and just create more mess.
So give them pretty similar break sizes. And slightly lower covers, but if you do have a gap, then you feed a bit more in the shed to make up that gap, and that way you're protecting the quality of the diet, the energy density of the diet. Basically keeping milk production consistent or more consistent.
And we feed a reasonable part of the concentrate as palm kernel. That's cheaper than silage anyway. Without even cost of feeding it out and wastage.
There's nothing wrong with palm kernel as long as it's done in balance. And you're mixing a bit of palm kernel with DDG and some
grain. Crushed wheat.
Great. Yeah, wheat and palm kernel is a pretty cool blend, actually. So I've discovered. Yeah, why do you put DDG in there?
Yeah, drive a little bit of appetite. Especially when, at the beginning of calving, when the heifers are getting used to eating feed in the shed.
So in the early part of lactation, they just eat more with a bit of 15, 20% DDG. It is. It's something that's been done more and more. Been talking to a few guys the last couple of days actually, and they're even just putting a bit of DDG with barley just to get the cows to eat a little bit more barley, because they don't really like straight grain that much.
It was pretty bland. You ever tried a mouthful?
No, I haven't. I probably need a lot of milk with it. And they tend to eat palm kernel sometimes a bit better than they do grain, which always surprised me.
Yeah, well, quite often too in spring, we'll put a little bit of DDG in the trailer mix. That's in a separate silo.
Yes. Right, so you have 2 silos, one for the shed, one external that goes into trailers. It's an easy way to store it, isn't it?
Well, it is, and you don't need a tractor to load it, and all those sorts of things.
Again, it's like you're saying before, keeping it simple so that the contract milkers can execute the important stuff well. Because they're not faffing around.
And it's just go and get the trailer. They've got trailer augers, they've got remotes on them. Fill a trailer. Or 2 trailers. Put it either in the end of the feed pad or in the exit race, depending which farm it is. And,
Yep.
you know, it's just 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour, you've done the job.
Yep. So I remember when you first came down, we talked about, what you're doing with the farms, and you've always been chasing smart machinery that makes things easier.
Yeah.
Like I know even with the in-shed feeding, you were pretty quick to put mineral dosing bins, and you're actually one of the earlier adopters around that. Why? Why did you put the mineral dosing bins in?
Simplicity.
Yep.
We have a good mineral supplier, which, we've used for a long time. We think it's an integral part of like keeping our animal health costs down by keeping our cows healthy. If we don't have down cows in spring, we get a few, but not high numbers. We're not dealing with them. So the risk of losses goes down and all those sorts of things. And I think the simplicity of putting a half-ton bag in the mineral dispenser, and it's got your macro and your micros in it. It's all done in one hit. It's mixed with the feed. And, when we have blood tested liver tests, they always come back good. No real remedial action needed. So you think, well, the cow's been healthy, most of the year. The poor old thing's got a hard time in spring in Southland.
Yep.
So
yeah, and they work hard too.
Yeah.
They do good production. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I had this conversation with the farm the other day, actually, just around, like cows that are really well fed and producing well are often really healthy.
Yeah.
And it just seems like when the cows are healthy, everyone's happier.
Yeah.
I don't know if you find that, but I was just talking to a guy the other day, and we're just sort of musing around staff and how to create a good environment for staff where they are really happy and enjoying their job. And one of the key things that he was saying is just if the cows are more settled and happier, like milking's easier, what you're doing out in the paddock's easier, it's just more enjoyable. You're not treating sick cows all the time, and they seem to move better on the race, like all those sort of things. Yep. It's almost like they all come into line just with really good nutrition and good production.
Yeah, well, probably helps the immune system, I guess. And,
Yep.
like they're not so susceptible to maybe getting as much mastitis or whatever, although the spring was a little bit challenging with that. But normally,
wet weather causes all sorts of drama. Probably a lameness, I could imagine.
Yeah.
A bit of an issue too.
To be fair, it probably wasn't, because we had done quite a bit of work on races and stuff like that, because we know that, cows need to be able to walk. Unfortunately, some of the worst bits, close to the Sheba, it does get a lot of work. They were done the year before.
Yeah, right. So when you got that really wet spring, you actually had really good races.
Yeah. And that's all part of like, talking, initially about keeping the infrastructure right, because then the flow on problems are not so bad. We've had years where we've had lots of lame cows, but last year wasn't our worst by any stretch.
And I guess, again, it's easier on the staff. The team have got more energy, so they can focus more on the grazing management or making sure that they're doing those key things right.
And cows are supposed to be done the day they're lame. So you draft them out, you do the cow's foot, and then you don't get that big build up of like, oh, that's a massive job now.
Yep.
And we try and make sure everybody on the farm can do lame cows. So, if you want to be getting the cows in, you're doing the lame ones. So you can choose whether you want to do that or milk them. And that way, it shares the workload and also makes sure that people are thinking about what makes cows lame.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that are going to have to share on doing them.
Yeah, which is smart, because if they know that they have to do the lame cows, they might just take a little bit more time when they're bringing them up.
And they are pretty good.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things which are quite rewarding to see, when people actually understand what causes problems and then they work actively to make those situations better.
And it's nice because when I come down, we're not talking about all the issues on farm. We're talking about, okay, well, what's the next things we can start looking at to take the farms to the next level, which is a fun place to be. And like we're saying, you talk about the app and looking at milk components and what that tells us about how well we're feeding the cows. And often it's not about feeding the cows more, it's just rearranging things so that the rumen's a bit happier, eh?
Yep.
So we'll see where that all goes.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to, that part of it, and adding some value to something with probably not costing any more money just by doing what we're doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the aim of the game, eh? Is using the resource we've got, just reorganising it in a more efficient way.
And like the guys on the farm, they'll get excited about trying to keep their dials in the green.
Yeah.
And that's something that I look forward to too, they'll be taking notice, and then they'll see all these little things that are building and, making more milk and actually making life easier. And hopefully they're content doing what they're doing.
It's cool. It's like raising a child with a farm. You know, you start and it's young and pretty fresh, but as you build the infrastructure and you build into people, and they build with the infrastructure and they stick around like your guys have, all of a sudden you actually get a pretty well-oiled, fine-tuned machine that allows you to sort of think about the business and not sort of be too in the business, but sort of working on the business, which is nice, eh?
Supporting guys is, like that's, they're doing a good job. You need to make sure that they're getting the support that they need. So they're not overwhelmed by a problem, which is either not a major problem, not in my eyes.
Yep.
Or we can fix something that is an issue.
So you're quite a big one for just being available for the guys, but kind of leaving them to it. So you're more there if they need you, and also there to encourage them when they're doing things well. But you don't. Yeah. Like, what's your process around sort of keeping an eye on what's happening?
We try and go to farms like once a week, and then we have a drive around, and it's a good time to find out things that need doing, because quite often you're not getting told,
like that drain needs cleaning out, and
or there's something wrong, and in a conversation it's a lot easier than ask them to write a big long report about maintenance on a farm or something,
which often never happens anyway.
And we're just looking at things, and I mean, it's a conversation amongst two farmers, a boss and an employee sort of conversation. It's just a general conversation. And when you drive around, you see things, a bit like what we're talking now, just flows freely. And then what needs to get sorted gets sorted. And I think that's an easier way to do it. And if they're concerned, I mean, they'll ask you or show you something, or if I'm concerned about like what might be happening, I'll say, well, hey, we just need to change this or something like that. You need to be there regularly enough so it doesn't get to a point where could be a problem.
Yeah, it's out of kilter. It's like having guardrails that are just keeping the ball in the middle.
That's exactly
but
what
giving
it's
them
right.
the freedom to actually play with the ball with it.
You're exactly right. You're keeping within the tracks, and you can get pretty close to each side, but don't go over the side. And that's all we're trying to do is enough leeway so they can learn, by what they're doing, but not so they get into a situation where something is less than useful.
And I guess as a contract milker, you're really both trying to help each other win anyway, aren't you?
Well, if they're not successful, we're not going to be successful. So, and I think, knowing that they can feed the cows is knowing that they can achieve, the level of production they need to fulfill what they're doing. And it's the same for us. I mean, it's not the cow's fault, and it's definitely not their fault if the grass doesn't grow because of the weather. So, we've got to do something about that.
Yeah. So it's just about removing the variables with what you can control.
Yep.
And it does make good sense to me, how you use the in-shed feed, and you're really aggressive about keeping the status quo in terms of, keeping that rumen fully functional, fully fed, essentially, with both quality feed and also enough quantity. In that way, so the cow's not going up and down, up and down, up and down. She's been pretty consistent, and you're just sort of managing around the shoulders with weather and everything else.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at, on a daily basis, that the milk is staying fairly consistent. I mean, it'll always change if you get a bad spell of weather, but within reason, we're a fairly smooth line.
So what techniques have you used with the guys to sort of work on their pasture management or allocation so that they're getting consistent allocations of grass?
I think one farm's particularly easy because every paddock's 4 hectares. I think it's making sure that we're giving them the right area every day, because the rest it'll either be enough or not enough, and then we'll adjust that, in the shed or with trailers or whatever we need to be doing. And I think that's, and especially when it comes to round speeds, I mean, the right allocation, you end up with the right round speed. And so if that all stays in whack, we don't get super long rounds at any time. And I think that if you do your farm walk and you can stack your paddocks from longest to shortest, at least you know where to look for the next paddock. You'll have a range if you did the farm walk 3 or 4 days ago. I mean, you go and pick the paddocks that you want to go to, or what works with where the cows are. And if they've got the right area, well, I think 90% of the way to actually getting that right. Yeah. So it's just probably the farm walk thing, and making sure that we're stacking the paddocks.
So farm
really
walk
high priority.
Twice a week when you're going fast?
No, they're still just once a week.
Once a week, yep.
Once a week to every probably 10 days when things are moderate. But yeah, it's giving you direction of where to look for your next paddocks rather than a little bit hit and miss is far better. I mean, it's creating information that's useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we give them the right area and then put those two together and top up whatever's missing.
Yep. So rather than adjusting the break lengths all the time based on how much feed's there, you give them more consistent area, and you just adjust to the in-shed feed to make up the difference.
Yeah, if it's short. Yeah.
Which is simple, especially when you have very even paddock sizes.
Yeah. They're not all that good.
But I guess the better set up they are, the easier they are to manage.
100%.
Yeah. So your managers that you might be developing a bit more, you'd probably put them on those farms that you know are a little bit simpler and a little bit easier to manage.
Yeah. I mean, they're all relatively, good to manage as far as like paddock sizes. They might vary a bit because of drains and stuff like that, but they won't be too far out. I mean, obviously they know what size the paddocks are, so you can manipulate a little bit what you're doing.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Some good stuff there. Oh, thanks heaps for your time, Chris. I appreciate it. And I enjoy these conversations. And we have plenty of them, which is great. So thanks everyone for jumping on. And I hope you got some really good information out of that. And great to have you join us. Feel free to jump on and have a look at any of the other podcasts that are there. Any comments or anything you've got, throw them in. The whole idea of this is to really try and get some good information out into the industry. And so follow along and look forward to seeing you on the next one.